The Roku Era, a time of unprecedented peace followed by one of the greatest atrocities in the Avatar franchise. How did we go from one of the most prosperous time periods to one of the worst? Some of the new lore from the Avatar Legends role-playing game helps us shed some light. Let's dig into it. Hey folks, my name is Antoine, your resident geek, and today I'll be breaking down the overview of Roku's era, from the role of the Avatar himself, to the general themes of the generation, to all the major nations and what they were up to during the time of Avatar Roku. By the end of the video, you should have a good sense of what it was like to live as a bender or non-bender under the charge of Avatar Roku. As a note, all information from this point on is coming within a 4-year period in the Avatar timeline between Fire Lord Sozin's coronation in 58 BG, before the Airbender genocide, to Avatar Roku's wedding in 54 BG. Of course, this is all sourced from the Avatar Legends role-playing game. If you want to stay up to date as I go through my coverage of all the lore, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Thanks to the overall peace during this time, and Avatar Roku being stated as possibly the most competent avatar since Yang Chen, the people of the 4 nations have been able to cultivate new technological advancements. But not every nation agrees with these new technological advancements, nor the idea that all nations should cooperate and collaborate with one another when many of them cannot be trusted with these new innovations in industry. Those who believe in isolation over connection believe this would mitigate any risk of terrible conflict between the people groups of the world. None were more vocal about this than the Air Nomads. We get some insight into why, years later, the Air Nomad genocide was able to work out with very little resistance. During this time, the Air Nomads were not one big happy family. Instead, they were split into 2 camps. One being the monks we see and know during Aang's childhood, peacekeepers working on an international scale to assist Avatar Roku with any conflicts that arise across the world. The other camp was a group called the Guiding Wind, who believe that traditional Air Nomads have grown too lethargic in their journey to seek enlightenment via collaborations with corrupt oligarchs, notably those in the Earth Kingdom. With the Air Nomads broken and spread, it would be difficult for them to defend the borders of their 4 air temples if need be. But as an aside, you would think that this would help them evade future genocide if they were spread out instead of clustered in single locations. Sorry, it never really made sense to me that nomads could fall to genocide so easily when they're, nomads. Because of the ever-evolving geopolitical landscape, many national leaders have defaulted to laying blame on outsiders rather than internal governance. Some do this from genuine belief, while others throw shade just to save their own asses. Deeper into the series, we'll dive into some of these conflicts, notably the northern passage of the port city Qinbao, where the Earth Kingdom and water tribes blame one another for a destructive tidal wave off the coast of the northern shores. Despite the grim future between the Fire Nation and Air Nomads, under Avatar Roku, many citizens of the Fire Nation collaborated and embraced Air Nomad philosophy, particularly the Guiding Wind faction of the Air Nomads. In fact, this movement is, in part, led by Fire Lord Sozin's very own sister, who is completely new to the lore. Her name is Zaysan, and she intends to forego her royal duties and possessions for the Air Nomad way. She also likely joins up with the Air Nomads for 2 reasons. 1, she is in a romantic relationship with an Air Nomad from the Western Air Temple, and 2, Fire Lord Sozin has employed new nationalistic policy to grow the perception of the Fire Nation's strength. From seemingly altruistic policies to bring his country out of poverty via expansion, to the more nefarious new tradition of dragon hunting. Because of all the prosperity in the world, it has led to a race for resources, mostly between the Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom, who are generally in favor of an industrial revolution, while the Air Nomads and Water Tribes are troubled about what some of these new technologies, and the pooling of resources to maintain them, will affect the spirits that have often resided in those 2 nations. There has been an uptick in the amount of angered spirits sprouting up among their lands, but no one is sure what is the source of these unbalanced spirits, the technologies themselves, or the conflict sprouting up over scarce resources. Unlike the Fire Nation, which is building new policies and new cultures, the Earth Kingdom, via Earth King Jianlu, dedicates its time to dismantling the constitution set up by its predecessors. Most notably, the Earth Kingdom completely dissolved the Order of the Earth Sages, a faction who at the time was trying to bring up the most impoverished of the kingdom. The Earth King would not have it though, pushing a narrative of fear from outside the Earth Kingdom borders, meaning he needed more absolute powers to maneuver against the likes of the Fire Nation to the west, or the Water Tribes in the conflict there in the north. Those who have submitted to King Jianlu's rule have been able to prosper, while those who oppose him have suffered. And it would seem like King Jianlu decided to enact his new policies during the time in which Avatar Roku was training to master the four elements, as though he had a narrow timeline to bring the Earth Kingdom further under his thumb before some avatar came in to ruin his plans. Which is pretty intelligent if you think about it, but at the same time, pretty scummy. Speaking of the Earth Kingdom, did you know that I sell Earth Rumble 6 merch? After the video, check out what I have to offer down below. With so much industrialization and more frequent collaborations between the four nations, people wonder which alliances across the globe are benefiting more than others. There is always this thin line between trust and betrayal, and it's difficult to determine which side of the line an alliance stands on. So while there is an overall peace across the world, there is also a tenuous layer between disagreement and outright war. Perhaps the best collaborators during this period are the Water Tribes and their two chiefs. Sure, the two have their disagreements from here and there, but ultimately, this is a time of unity for the sister tribes, with each seeking to grow prosperity for their lands via securing trade routes near their coast. The only significant issue is how they plan to deal with the angry spirits in their villages. During Roku's era, outright wars are extremely rare outside of a few skirmishes that are often quelled by the Air Nomads or Avatar Roku himself. Because this time period is dictated mostly on the back of genuine peace, most dealings between nations are backdoor and diplomatic, though oftentimes this can slip into straight-up blackmail. Propaganda becomes a large focus of this time period, with information, whether true or false, becoming a much more valuable commodity than ships, weapons, or even the martial art of bending. As Avatar Roku traveled the world mastering the elements, he became very familiar with how fragile the alliance and potential outbreaks of conflicts were between the four nations. His whole career would be nestled in the depths of Cold War, but Avatar Roku manages to keep the boiling pot that was his world from bubbling over by being as patient and as impartial as he possibly could. So for those of you who are planning to play the role-playing game, if you like this sort of setup where you're bubbling into a Cold War and it might be a war, it might not be a war, this would be the best time period for you. But if you're looking for outright war, you probably want to turn to something like the 100-Year War period, or if you're more into fighting against criminal organizations, then Kyoshi's era would be better for you. Now, the reason that Avatar Roku was so patient and impartial during his own time period is because of his own Avatar training. When he was trying to enter the Avatar state for the first time, he destroyed the Fire Temple on Crescent Island because he was too quick to enter and master the Avatar state, which we witnessed during the Escape from the Spirit World online game. This lesson in composure and moderation would branch out in all that he did, because he knew that the four nations were not unlike his first use of the Avatar state, and if he allowed the four nations to run out of control, it would lead to war not seen in the history of the Avatar-verse. And that's it! In the next video in this series, we'll be taking a deeper look at the Fire Nation and what it was up to during Roku's era, from its isolationist sensibilities to its rebellious royal families and more. And tell me what was the most interesting bit of information you discovered in this video in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.